Welcome. I'm just trying to get this together here. That's a pretty good picture, huh? Okay. Welcome. This is MC Starman, Martin Comtois. So MC Starman, you guys know I'm going to do a little smudge here to bring on the full moon in a beautiful way. So nice to see you guys and to celebrate this full moon with you. What intense and beautiful and demanding energies we're living through. Om Gyanati Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master who opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge and destroyed the ignorance in my heart. Beautiful prayer from the Sanskrit language. In the Vaishnava tradition. So, here we are. Oh, there's 3 people on here. How exciting. But many of you are catching it later, and that's fine. And there's a comment thread. And if you write some comments, I will answer the questions at the end. I was thinking of doing an interesting angle for the chart, but this looks good. Looks like all the planets that we want to be are on there. So, full moon tonight at 7:35 on the West Coast. It's almost getting ready to rise on the eastern horizon, and she's going to be big and bright. I don't know about you guys, but I've been feeling it. So, you know, to be objective, it's really easy in this day and age to get all caught up emotionally in what's going on. And either way, you know, whether we think ourselves transcended or immune to this folly, or whether we're caught up into it, I think the tendency to get hysterical is really strong. And as the full moon been growing, it's been really demanding on all of our processes. So, you know, how to look at this objectively, and that's what astrology does for us, is it allows us to look at the energies that are governing our world in an objective manner. We look at them from above. You know, here are the planets, and then we draw conclusions. So this whole week, about for the last 7 days, Jupiter and Pluto have been in an exact conjunction. And this is a really key astrological event that we'll see, that we will see throughout the year. We have 3 exact Jupiter-Pluto conjunction this year. Now, ending today, tomorrow, exactly on the same degree. And then also in June, I have my dates here. In June to July, June 23rd to July 9th. During the eclipse, we're going to have an eclipse during that time, which will be really telling. And then November 8th to 13th, also going to be very telling, Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. So what we're living through right now in terms of intensity, we're going to get to relive it 3 times. And as planets goes, the outer planets, when they transit a planet, a lot of times they'll go forward, touch Pluto like it is now, and then Jupiter will move almost to the end of Capricorn and will move retrograde. We'll make a second pass to Pluto, and then we'll turn direct and make a third pass to Pluto in November. And then in December, at the end of the year, we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the end of Capricorn there. And that's really powerful. What's interesting to note, one thing, is that the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction will make 3 conjunctions between 22 and 24 degree of Capricorn. So if you have some planets in that, in the mid-20s, early 20s of any of the cardinal signs, liable to really feel that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. So that's the main factor, and we'll return to the Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, Mars thing that's going on. But first, let's look at the full moon and the new moon coming up. Today is the full moon. So we have full moon in Libra, sun in Aries, sun, moon opposition, the earth in the center, squares, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, and Mars, forming a 6-planet T-square, which is really intense. And again, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, Uranus are really key points in this crisis we've been living through. And again, as I've been saying, this crisis that we're living through is not simply something that is just about, the last few weeks, but it's been building in our unconscious for quite a while. And so we're all been feeling it really intensely. For a good many years, I was talking to a friend, doing a reading for a friend, and, I've been working with her for quite a while, about 5 years. And I asked her, how long have I been talking about this? And she said, since I've known you. And really, for those who have been following my work, ever since 2012, ever since, the signs have been really clearly on the wall. And again, in 2012, you had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Aries, Saturn in Libra, and Pluto in Capricorn, forming a T-square, which is very similar to what we're going through right now. And so again, being objective and realizing that the evolution we're going through right now is not just about the situation that we're facing, but it has been a situation that's been growing in our collective. The veneer of our materialistic society is showing some really serious cracks, and a little, situation is really the situation that we're facing right now with this virus is really the tip of the iceberg, and the changes are much more profound and will last for a long time. But we're facing an interesting time in that crisis, and that it just happened. And now with the full moon, there's some release of tension, and I think we're starting to calm down and realizing that we need to have a long view to what is going on. And this is what this particular workshop, if you may say, NC Starman post is about, is getting a bit of a long view of what's going to be happening over the course of the next year. So I'll be talking about the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and then in 2021, we'll have Jupiter and Saturn will take turn. While Jupiter will only make 1 square to Uranus, and then Saturn in the course of 2021 will make 3 squares to Saturn, to Uranus, and that's going to be very powerful. I'm working on a longer post and longer article where I will put my notes together and give you some charts and a full analysis of the next couple of years. So I'm working on that, and also went back into history and looked at the Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions in history, and I'll share that in the course of this post. And then there's more research to be done, and if anybody wanted to join me in this research, we can look at events that occur during those times of Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions, and gain some insight into the meaning of our times. And again, from an objective perspective, looking at really what is going down and how can we best react to it. And it's easy to react emotionally to the situation and to get caught up in the mass hysteria, but really having an objective perspective and seeing what is the archetypal structure of the times and what are they inviting us to do, because it's a great invitation. And again, we've been seeing it all along. For those who haven't watched my videos, I have Priestess Rising on my YouTube channel, the same channel that you can look at, that we did in the fall of last year, that speaks of the Priestess Rising, of learning to live life in a sacred manner again, coming back to, reassessing our materialistic civilization and individually learning to be the change that we want to see in the world. In other words, changing the definitions of how we interact in the world. And so I talk about that extensively in the Priestess Rising, and I will continue to do so as this sequence of events unfold. So, just to get you caught up, so in January 10th, 2020, which is about the beginning of this crisis, we had a Saturn, Pluto exact conjunction. Now, because of the alignment of this situation, Saturn, Pluto conjunction. Saturn will only make one exact conjunction with Pluto. Now it's, entered into Aquarius already, and we'll go up to 2 degrees Aquarius and go retrograde, and we'll go back about 26 degrees, and we'll not meet Pluto again, but we'll get within 2 degrees, and that'll be at the end of the year. While Pluto does the 3-part thing where it passes, goes back, and it comes back, and then makes a conjunction to Saturn. So these are the 5 main events of 2020 in terms of this real intensity of death, Pluto, death and rebirth, what is dying within me to be reborn to a higher octave of expression. Pluto is about transformation. It's about power. It's the power source. And then again, it's the Lord of Hell. So Pluto moves very slowly through the collective. And anytime it interfaces with other planets, there's deep social and political and evolutions that take place. And then Pluto's been in Capricorn ever since 2008. And so, the crumbling of collective institutions and the exposing of the fallacy of a lot of our materialistic society has been the work of Pluto for quite a while now, since the crash of 2008. And so as Pluto's been progressing to Capricorn, it's been interacting with many, many different planets, that being Saturn and Jupiter, but also in square to Uranus. And we'll talk more about all of those as we go along. So then the first event of the year was, the January 10th conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. And then now we're experiencing exactly the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. And again, we'll see 2 more of these in June and November. So as I was looking back into time to understand the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, I looked at key times in history. The last time that Jupiter and Pluto were in conjunction was December 2007. So just a year before the financial crash, or 6 months before the financial crash of 2008 and the beginning of Pluto. So Jupiter and Pluto were in conjunction right before Pluto came into Capricorn. So 2007, and again, a lot of research. I'm going to do some charts of that period, and it would be also really nice if we look back at some events that occurred in 2007, what the headlines were, but that's some further research that we can do. Then after 2007 was 1994, Jupiter and Pluto in Scorpio in December of 1994. So that was a very pivotal time as well. The Iron Curtain just come to get down, and of course we had some various conflicts in the world, but the world was in rapid state of change. Then the only very similar time in recent history that I can find that resembles what we're going through right now is 1981 and 1982. And in 1981-82, Jupiter and Pluto were in conjunction, and then Saturn and Pluto were also in conjunction, and Jupiter-Saturn, had a conjunction around that time. And that was, also economic challenges and fear of nuclear holocaust and the conflict between the Soviet bloc and the American NATO alliances. The tension was at its height, and also that was the beginning of the AIDS crisis. And then we practiced safe sex. Now we're practicing safe social exchanges, and it's kind of the same kind of of archetypal structure. So 1981, then we go to 1968. 1968, in September of 1968, we have a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in Virgo, and that's in opposition to Saturn and in conjunction to Uranus. So 1968 is also a very similar time to what we went through, that we're going through right now. 1956, don't know so much about that, but the next period after that is 1943. And that really, in my view, shows the greatest similarities in terms of times that we're going through right now. And if you look at the astrology of 1941, 42, and 43, you'll find that the collective psychosis, the collective hysteria is very similar during that time as it is currently. And then 1930 and 1931 is the last time in our history that Jupiter touched Pluto 3 times in its course. See, usually Jupiter will pass through Pluto, will go really far, will turn retrograde, and won't touch Pluto 3 times like it is doing now. The only time that it's done that in recent history is 1931, 1932. Actually, in 1930, Pluto and Jupiter were in exact alignment from October, almost a month long. And then again in 1931. And of course, that was after the big crash, and that was the Great Depression. And so, very similar archetypal structures. Then we have 1918 and that big plague that happened and the end of the war. And then 1906 before that. So more research to be done on that. But what we get is that this Jupiter-Pluto has big influences, and these are big important times. And again, you can't look at astrology just from the perspective of one planet. You have to look at all of them. And so I will draw charts from all of these and make them into a concise study of these times. But so then Saturn, but the 4 archetypes that we're looking at that are really important is Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, and Uranus, all engaged in this. Uranus is the revolutionary, evolutionary urge of the collective and of the personal. Pluto is the death and rebirth transformation process. Saturn is the limit of the ego and mastering what it is that I'm here to contribute to the world. And Jupiter is my hope and my faith, and what it is that I want to grow to be when I grow up. Enthusiasm and optimism. Jupiter is really big, and it makes everything really big. And Pluto's death and rebirth. So there are interesting archetypal conclusions that become driven from that. One, Jupiter makes everything bigger, so then Pluto, death and rebirth, is really made bigger through that. Pluto's very powerful. It gives power to Jupiter and optimism. So in a sense, it's a really good time to start new things. You see, so many of us are reacting to this new change, and we're making energetic progress in redefining who we are. And so Pluto, Jupiter can be a very good strength of new creations and enthusiasm if we're connected with the power of the Great Mother. And then also, if we look at plutocracies and we look at government, Pluto would rule them, and Jupiter, emboldens government, makes government bigger. This wave of intensifying government control, Jupiter, Pluto, very similar to what was going on in the 1940s, and also in the 1930s. We had the Great New Deal, and we had so many different things to try to stimulate the economy. Some of them enlightened, some of them not so enlightened. So Jupiter, Pluto, and again, we're going to have 3 exact conjunctions. And so what we're feeling right now, there's a sense that we're just beginning to understand the full meaning of the crisis that we're living through. And chances are that as we go along, we will it will awaken some resentment, but also some revolutionary enthusiasm. And we already feel that, there's a certain enthusiasm that's been created in this process that we want to really show up for these changes. And in the light of the strict government control, we can see the light of change being born out of that darkness of isolation, if you may. So then let's look at the next new moon. So the next new moon, Venus will move a little bit further up. And I don't know if you guys have been seeing Venus in the sky every morning. Oh my God. And also this, now Mars has moved much further along, but in the early morning, before the sun rises, you can see Jupiter and Saturn in the sky early morning before sunrise, and you can also see Mars a little higher. And earlier they were really close together, so that's around 6 o'clock in the morning. You can see these 3 planets, and you can also see Venus, and of course tonight you'll see the moon and Venus will be the dominating 2 planets. Then it will be very, very bright. Now, as the cycle continues, Mercury will come into Aries, and then the sun will move into Taurus, and it will move into a conjunction with Uranus, and the moon will move and form a triple conjunction of moon, sun, Uranus, almost exact triple conjunction in a square, so a 90-degree angle to Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn. And so this full moon, there's a lot of release of tension because of the full moon. Is also a certain release of tension and gaining a little more clarity and a little more confidence in the crisis. I think that now we're getting used to the new rules. we're getting used to the situation, and also we're getting more informed about the depth of the crisis that we're facing, and we're having a little more time to reflect on what it means to us personally. My sense is as the moon continues to return to the new moon, Mars will do a square to Uranus, almost doing that now. And that will be the awakening of a revolutionary Uranian, evolutionary kind of mode, that we can choose a response that is more in according to the maturity of spirit and the wisdom of spirit that we have as a collective. And so I think that there will be invitations to look at the crisis in a more enlightened way as this new moon builds. The new moon is on 4/22/2020, so April 22nd, sometime in the evening, about the same time, 7:38, 7:28, something like that. And so then that triple conjunction makes a square to Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn. By now Jupiter is about a degree into Aquarius. Jupiter's moved past Pluto a little bit, and that tension of the square. So we have a T-square involving 6 planets, and we have a square involving 6 planets, this full moon and the next new moon. And to me, we're going to get some strong indication of how this is all playing up. And my sense is that a different story will start emerging, and the Uranian, revolutionary attitude, or the need to bring light to the situation and to look at it from an enlightened perspective, is going to become more and more present as the crisis becomes better understood by the collective. Now we've been, the media has really formed our opinion and made us really choose a response that, to many of us feels over the top. Yes, it's a serious situation, but there are other things that are really serious as well, like the crumbling of our economy, and what are we going to do about, our economy. And yes, the government's printing all kinds of money, but eventually we're going to have to pay for that. And how is that going to work? And the practical fact of the matter is our institutions are crumbling, and the media has been exposed as feeding this hysteria and feeding the fear, and also the pharmaceuticals and their agenda seems to be exposed by the over-the-top reaction to this crisis. So as the new moon comes along, different perspectives are going to arise, and we're going to start questioning, and that tension will be pretty intense. And again, this is a pattern that we'll see throughout the year. So this is just a bit of an introduction, so that you can see. Again, astrology is to help us see objectively. And again, in your own state of consciousness and your own state of awareness, tonight at the full moon, meditate on what you're going through as an individual, and realize that Jupiter, Pluto, where is that falling in your chart? And the Pluto Saturn conjunction, and then, all, if you have any planets at the end of the cardinal signs, Capricorn, Aries, Libra, Cancer, you're really being triggered by that. So looking at objectively from the perspective of the planets, what is going on in your process? So that's the Jupiter, Pluto. And then we went, and again, this is a lot of information I've been putting on, and I'll put all that on paper, and I'll do more research and do some charts for you to help you prepare. And again, getting a feel of the full moon that we're going through tonight, and then moving into the new moon coming up. But again, let's look a little further down the road. So down the road, what we have, okay, so the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, March 29th to April 7th, then June 23rd to July 9th, through the eclipse season, and then November 8th to November 13th, And then in December, we have Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction. Now, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction in alchemy was known, in early astrology, was known as the Maxima Conjunctio. And that's found that term in Jung's work on the Mysterium Conjunctionis. And so the Maxima Conjunctio in all of history, it's been known as a very powerful time of social, economic changes, political, socio-economic changes. Jupiter and Saturn usually conjoined every 20 years, 2020, 2000 and Y2K, 1980, and the crisis we lived at that time, 1960, 1940, 1920, all, roughly. So that is a very, very important conjunction, and it comes at the end of the year after this dance of Jupiter and Pluto and this conjunction of Saturn and Pluto that we saw earlier this year. So the sense that we're going to really understand the full magnanimity of the changes that were going on by then. So again, astrologically, it looks like this is going to be a prolonged, but again, it was prolonged before too. I mean, we saw 2008 and we saw 2012 and we saw many different, crises emerge, the natural disasters, fires, the increase of storms, the concern with the planetary environment. And one of the real positive things about this whole crisis is that all of a sudden we're behaving like we care about the Earth. We're lowering our footprint. We're actually in the process of saving the environment inadvertently by being worried about a virus. How interesting does nature work? Same thing with dependence on fossil fuel. At the next, at the neighborhood gas station, gas is 96 cents a liter. We haven't seen that since the 90s. This gas this low, and so there are other repercussions that will take place economically, and probably an adjustment of real estate prices, and so many different facets of our society will be put into question. It will require tremendous courage, a courage that will have to be manifested by our political leaders. And I think that we as the people will have a great role to play in that. So Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, that's 2020. And then 2021, you have first Jupiter and Saturn move into Aquarius. And first, Jupiter will make an exact square to Uranus and only one, and that will be on January 15th to 19th at 6 degrees Aquarius, 6 degrees Taurus. And now if you have any planets in early fixed signs, they're going to get triggered by that T-square. By that square. And so that's really important. And to me, Jupiter, enthusiasm, making everything big, in Uranus, the revolutionary. My sense is that by January 2021, there's going to be a pushback to this crisis, in that we're gathering momentum, gathering strength, gathering community, gathering the intelligence that we need to move forward in this great crisis. And my sense is after the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and then as Jupiter moves into a square with Uranus, Jupiter-Uranus is tremendously creative, optimistic, and lots of innovations are going to be born, and we're going to see some real change being affected. And then throughout 2021, Uranus and Saturn make 3 squares. And Saturn rules Aquarius, and also Uranus rules Aquarius. And Saturn-Uranus, alignments tend to be very challenging, in that Saturn is the Grim Reaper and established order, and Uranus is changing that established order. And in the sign that they both co-rule together, in the sign of Aquarius, and we talk about the age of Aquarius, So that's going to be a preparation to what happens in 2024 when Pluto comes into Aquarius. And so, you know, you've heard me say that this is a pivotal time in human history. Probably, you know, most important time that we've seen as a collective since, you know, the Great Depression and World War II, similar to what we experienced in the 1960s, the 1980s, the early 2000s. You know, they have same flavor, but a sense that this is probably more powerful than any of them. And so I was studying through all of this. At no point in my 100 years of review, 100 and some years of review, have I seen a situation where Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn are in triple conjunction like that. And all the inner planets have triggered this and will trigger it through the year. And so a sense that that we've come to a place, you know, like that prophecy that I shared on Facebook, you know, the Hopi prophecy. And if you follow my Facebook page, you can go and check it out in my timeline. But it is about this new time that is awakening. And yes, it's very positive, but also very challenging in that the powers that be won't give up their control so easily, as we're seeing with this big push of the pharmaceutical medical establishment really pushing their agenda to make us dependent on their drugs and on their way of thinking. And so, you know, we're you know, in a sense, they're exposing themselves, and our government's dependent, you know, on their, you know, I mean, the medical lobby is the greatest lobby in Canada, and so, and in the United States. So, you know, and then the media and how the media is reacting. I think over time we're going to get to see the real meaning of what just happened, and I think that that's liable, you know, by this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, come to surface actually what is going on. And then as Jupiter comes into square with revolutionary Uranus, and then Saturn makes 3 exact squares to Uranus, my sense is that 2021 announces itself to be a powerful revolutionary year. So Jupiter will square Uranus on January 15th to 19th, Saturn February 16th to 24th, then June 13th to 17th, and then December 24th to 29, 2021. So again, I think this cycle of time we're coming into is going to be a prolonged process that will see many ups and downs. But again, the only way we can deal with these times is to make energetic progress in the good, face the crisis in a positive manner, and engage with it fully. I see there's a comment or a question. My friend Travis is asking, can you tell us more about Jupiter, Pluto, and other planets in relation to meditating on all of this with the full moon tonight? What a beautiful question, Travis. So astrology is a practice, right? It's not, you know, it's like yoga. It's like practicing yoga or meditation or kung fu. You know, astrology is a practice, and what the function of astrology is to help us see the cycles of nature from an objective perspective. And it is a study. You know, we're supposed to study all of these cycles and understand them. So as we look, you know, as I mapped out the next 2 years in a, you know, in kind of a, you know, Jupiterian, Plutonian, Saturnian, Uranian kind of perspective, we kind of see, you know, and as we were leading to this crisis, we could see it earlier. You know, we've been seeing it. Astrological alignments are like waves, you know. A wave in the ocean, at first it's imperceptible. You can't see it, but as it moves towards the shore, it grows and it grows and it grows, then it breaks. So an astrological event is the same thing. The tension's been building and building and building, and then Saturn, Pluto came in a conjunction and the wave broke, right? And then now we're feeling the after effect of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and we're coming into the Jupiter-Pluto, wave, and then that wave will have 3 waves, and then we'll have the Uranian, Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto waves. So we're in the middle of stormy seas, and it's quite evident. And so then if we use astrology as a practice, then what we do is we use the full moon energy, we do a ritual, and we pray for the full moon, we pray for the sun to give us some clarity as to how can we make best use of these times. There's a great paradox. We can look at these as really bad times, or we can look at them as really good times. They're really bad if we focus on the bad, and they're really good if we focus on the good. And so what is the energetic progress in the good that I can make? What is it that I can choose to act? And then at a full moon, it is the resolution of a great tension. And so now we're getting some clarity. After the full moon breaks, we get, the wave breaks, we get some integration time. We get to harvest the lessons. And so now that we're coming out of this intensity of the first Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and as we're sitting in the full moon and accessing all the great realizations that have come from this time, then we can move forward. And so then, to answer your question, Travis, is you trying to seek some clarity through the full moon as to what it is that you can move into the best possible way into these times. Unite with community, unite with friends, form structures of sustainability, and move forward, knowing fully well that we get the opportunity to make the world anew. So that's my MC Starman number 6. A few announcements. I've been offering readings on a pay what you can basis for anybody who needs to be supported, and getting a picture of what your transits are at this time is really important. And so if you want to get some support, I'm basically here. I've been doing lots of readings online, and again, whatever you can afford. So reach out, send me a message, and we can arrange for an online reading of your chart, and I will work with your budget. Also, one of the things I'm offering more and more is dream analysis. I'm finding that so many people have very, very profound dreams during this time. And so if you want to engage in dream work, you can watch my video on YouTube about dream symbolism and how to work with your dream, and then we can enter into a regular visit where we see each other and work with your dreams and help you understand your charts and your dreams and how they work together and how they're guiding you into this new age. And that's really the great benefit that astrology can offer you, is an objective, long view way of looking at the world without getting inflamed by the hysteria, but to know what you need to do. And of course, all of the things that we've been talking, ever since the 60s, in terms of women's rights and in terms of, the respect of the poor, and fighting back against war, and not wanting a peaceful, natural, sustainable future for our children and our grandchildren. All of these things, those are the real issues of our times, and this is what we're fighting for. And this little virus is only a bump on the road towards accomplishing these greater goals that our collective is asking for. As we say, the age of Aquarius is coming, and it's time for us to do. So when I was doing the Priestess Rising workshops earlier in the fall of last year, I came up with a little poem that I'd leave you with. It's just a 4-line poem, and it basically says, if not I, then whom? If not now, then when? The priestess is rising. It's time to show up. And so these are really important times for us to, hold to our truth, hold to what we are here to do, and to manifest these profound changes that are being asked of us, and to become the change that we want to see in the world. So that's my MC Starman number 6. Pass it on. I got a website also you can visit, and please reach out for astrology readings and dream readings. And if you're so inclined to, and if you like these and you feel like you want to support my craziness, then you can always drop me a little donation, like my great friend Alan did the other day. Sent me a little donation to support my work so that I can move forward. So please, it's an honor to be of service, and follow my YouTube channel, and we'll see you down the road. Yo. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That was fun.